Thanks very much. Welcome everybody to the last session of the 2018 Diggers and Dealers Conference. Our first speaker for this session is Nicholas Mather, the Chief Executive Officer of SolGold PLC. I'd like you to welcome to the podium, please. Nick is currently the CEO of SolGold PLC, which is heading up and progressing the development and exploration of a Tier 1 copper-gold porphyry in Ecuador. SolGold has been a numerous award winner in the last 12 months, and other roles that Nick has includes sitting on the board of DGR Global, Dark Horse Resources, Iron Ridge Resources, Oztin Mining, Armour Energy and Lakes Oil. Previous highlights of Nicholas's career include being an executive director of Arrow Energy until his resignation in 2004, and that company drove the development of Arrow's large Surat Basin coal bed methane project in southeast Queensland. Other achievements include being a founding director of Orbis Gold, which was sold in 2014 for $178 million. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you very much for coming to see the SolGold presentation. I must say I'm honoured to, after all these years, be presenting a non-West Australian company at this esteemed forum. So, SolGold is a South American focused in Ecuador company, and we are an emerging copper and gold major. We have an integrated pipeline of ultimately development projects and a string of great exploration projects coming along behind that, and I'll show you why we lay claim to being an emerging major as we go through. So read that in a hurry. I'll test you on it at the end, and if there's any questions, please feel free to grill me. But SolGold is an emerging copper and gold major. Our main focus is on the Cascabel project in northern Ecuador. It's a highly endowed part of the Andean copper belt. It's rich in gold, and we have, in addition to our 85% interest in Cascabel, 11 other world-class projects that we believe will deliver great porphyry copper, gold and epithermal gold projects as well. We currently have 12 rigs drilling on this project. We're spitting out about 10,000 metres a month. We're updating last year's resource statement. That'll come out later this year, and we're targeting about 10 million tonnes of copper and 25 million ounces of gold in this project. We haven't yet fully defined the limits of it, and we're certainly very interested in the high-grade section of it that forms the centre of the ore resource there, and we're looking at that as the beginning of the development for the Alpala ore body in the Cascabel tenement. We have a very open share register. Newcrest Mining is the largest shareholder, but as I'll show you later, they don't control us, and it's not a blocking stake. That's very important. We are looking at implementing a multi-pronged strategy over the next year to get Alpala up to a feasible status, and also look to high-grade gold occurrences which we've found in the vicinity of Cascabel and the Alpala project to try and bootstrap the development of Alpala without having to have recourse to pernicious capital markets. So that's the first of our projects, and then we have this regional pipeline which is going to augment the development of Alpala and see SolGold grow over the decades to come. So why did we go there? Well, we're interested in finding giant copper-gold deposits. We started off looking for them on the Rim of Fire in the southwest Pacific in Solomon Islands, and we found that the rocks there are not oxidised enough. The operating environment was a little tough, and so was the regulatory regime. So we went to one of the most prolific copper belts in the world. It's the Andean copper belt. It's got about half of the world's copper on it, and we liked Ecuador because it's got an emerging mining culture. It's on the northern end, it's gold rich, and importantly, it's very underexplored. So 4 years ago, we got a first mover advantage there. They hadn't really opened up the cadastre when we first went there, and that's paid off in spades. We now have these 10 other projects that all have the opportunity to deliver us world-class copper gold projects. So why do we like it so much? Well, it's basically about oxygen. In the Southwest Pacific, the plates are too thin, they subduct too quickly, they don't get enough oxygen into them, and you need oxygen to create an oxidised system and bring those precious and base metals to the top of the porphyry systems. So the oxygen scavenges the iron, forms magnetite. We use that to show up in aeromagnetic surveys where these porphyry systems are, and we get high grades of copper and gold in the form of chalcopyrite and bornite with gold occurring in them. So lots of metal comes in through the Carnegie Ridge, one of these thick subducting oceanic plate regimes, and that's why this part of the Andean copper belt is so rich. So what does Ecuador offer us? Well, we can't see much geologically different between the geology of Ecuador and the same area of northern Chile. In northern Chile, you'd cover 25% of the world's copper resources, and here we have one country away in Ecuador, a geological province that really hadn't been properly explored at all. So that's why we decided, rather than just focusing on our pala, we would try and cover the whole lot, and through our expert porphyry man, Dr. Steve Garwin, who some of you may be familiar with, ex-Newmont, we set about identifying and securing those other tenements, and I'll tell you a little bit about them later. So why haven't they been found in Ecuador before? Well, it's basically about the weather. In Chile, there's no cloud, no rain, no soil, no vegetation cover, and you can see these things from space. In Ecuador, it's very different. There's cloud, rain, soil, vegetation cover. You need sophisticated aeromagnetic detection and modelling systems to identify where these porphyries are, and that's why we've been able to really understand how they form, what they look like, and where to find the rich copper and gold heart of these things. And that should, we believe, lead to the discovery of some more globally important copper-gold monsters, such as Chuquicamata, Escondida, in this very important Eocene system. And then, of course, in addition to that, there's the Jurassic belt that Fruta del Norte sits on in the southern part of Ecuador, where we have a really great footprint too. So geologically, there's no reason why we can't find some more of these things, and importantly, SolGold has a 4-year first mover advantage on securing a footprint across the best prospects in this very exciting emerging mining nation. Our capital structure, we have just on 1.7 billion shares on issue. Newcrest is the largest shareholder. They've been very supportive in capital raisings. They hold 14.5%, but it's not a blocking stake. It's important that everybody out there realise that. If we get confronted with an attractive change of control deal, Newcrest is obligated to follow the wishes of 60% of the non-Newcrest share register and the recommendation of the board, supported by our independent experts. So Newcrest is not a blocker. They are supportive technically and they are supportive financially, but we don't have to rely upon them. Very importantly, as the emergence of some of the other great companies in this forum has showed, and I point particularly to Northern Star, the importance of a great team of people is really critical, and we are blessed with some people that I've now operated with over the past 5 years, and in the case of Jason Ward and Ben Whistler, nearly 20 years. But Jason's the exploration manager and country manager for the Cascabel project. He's a remote operations specialist. There's no task that's too difficult for him. He's expert with community and government relationships, and in fact relationships with all of the stakeholders. It's all very well having a granted exploration licence, but you've got to be able to get on there, do the work, and Jason facilitates all of that. Once we get on there, Dr. Steve Garwin has been instrumental in identifying where the copper and gold should be, and Ben Whistler's been instrumental in collecting the data, storing it in a useful manner, and then getting the necessary modelling done on it to show how this very exciting ore body is coming out. So great team of people, great culture, and we look forward to this precipitating more and more success for SolGold as we go on. Lots of people say, well, why would you be in Ecuador? It hasn't got a great mining history, but that's precisely why we do like it. The Ecuadorian government is taking a very responsible attitude to the development of their mining culture, their Mining Act, and the regulations that support the Act. So they've been reducing taxes as they apply to the mining industry in that country, and Ecuador now finds itself sitting comfortably within the range of acceptable South American nations from a mining point of view. A lot of the consultation has also been with Wood Mackenzie as well as industry, so it's not like they're just imposing some draconian mining regulations on an exploration and mining industry that's interested in the country. They're doing it very responsibly, and that has meant that a number of very important companies have also been attracted to this part of the world. Now, you all know about Fortescue, and you know about Hancock. For them, mining iron ore has been a religion. It's a metal that the world needs relentlessly to fuel urbanisation and economic growth and development. And clearly for them, copper is the new iron ore. That's why they are also very active in the country, and Fortescue is second to us in terms of the exploration ground that we cover, and we are certainly the most active exploration company in Ecuador at the moment. We have 86 geologists, of which half are deployed on the regional effort. So the developments being undertaken at Fruta del Norte by Lundin Gold are also very important. They pave a great pathway for future mining developments in the country. So we like the place. It's a yellow light emerging nation, and they're putting a lot of effort into becoming globally acceptable. A little bit about the ownership structure. The project is held by Exploraciones Nova Mining SA, or ENSA. SolGold owns a beneficial and registered interest of 85% in ENSA, and we are funding the junior shareholder Cornerstone through the feasibility project, and at the end of that, Cornerstone will have to both contribute and also repay 15% of the costs incurred since we earned our interest after the expenditure of $2.5 million. So we're in a great position from the point of view of ownership of the project, and we're very happy where we sit with Cornerstone at the moment. Now, we've found a large and a very rich ore body with an even richer heart to it. If you were in the high and dry Chilean Andes, that'd be fantastic, but we're not. We've got some other tremendous logistic advantages, such as being close to an international hydroelectric power network. We have sealed highways that go through the tenement. You can breathe there easily. There's water available for setting up a processing plant and running slurry pipelines if you need that to get to ports that are only 100, 150 kilometres away on the Pacific coast. And I can see a line of ships to Japan with some of our concentrate from those ports. So all of this adds up to about $3 or $4 billion worth of possible capital advantages when it comes to a development, and that combined with the outstanding grade of this project and its rich heart means that Cascabel is certainly the home to one of the next great porphyry developments in the world. How have we gone about finding it? Well, as I mentioned before, magnetite's very important. It indicates we've got an oxidised intrusive system, an oxidised porphyry system with concentration of the metals near the top. So we've flown the entire tenement with airborne aeromagnetics, and that has told us where the smoke is, and then we've picked out the spot fires looking at geochemistry importantly. Manganese holes tell us where the intrusive systems have been hot and wet, and the metal's very mobile and able to concentrate near the top. We like the presence of molybdenum. It tells you that the systems come off a big batholith, and that's a characteristic of a lot of South American porphyry systems. And then, of course, we want a high copper to zinc ratio. We focused our drilling originally at the Alpala cluster in the southern part of the tenement there, and that was largely because it was complex, and we could see outcropping porphyry mineralisation in Alpala Creek in just a 50-metre intersection. We engaged Hubbard Perforaciones or Hubbard Drilling. They are spectacular drillers. Anybody wishing to use a man-portable drilling program in South America, you need to talk to Lance Hubbard, so long as we're not using his rigs, and we will try and use as many of them as possible on the other projects through the country. But we've been able to return some of the most spectacular copper-gold intersections in porphyry exploration history, and you can see there from that table that we sit in the happy company of projects like Oyo Tolgai, Grasberg, Cadia. This is a world-class project. It's emerging as a Tier 1 project. It's something that will ride across metal price cycles and last intergenerationally, and that's the first of 11 that SolGold has. So if we're cheap on the basis of an evaluation of just Alpala, watch this space. Last year we put out our maiden resource statement, just over 1 billion tonnes of mineralised porphyry mineralisation, and that contains over 12 million ounces of gold and 5 million tonnes of copper in indicated and inferred categories. We decided that before we really get underway with the preliminary economic analysis, we wanted to define really how big the rich heart and how big the extent of the porphyry system was. So that's why we have 12 drilling rigs working at the moment. 10 of them are on Alpala and 2 of them are on a satellite prospect called Aguanaga. So we've done 135,000 metres of drilling so far. 12,000 metres of them are still sitting in the assay lab. That's about 5 weeks delay. We've got another 20,000 metres of new holes planned. We're using the Devico system to make sure that we don't put too many metres into the barren surrounding country rock. So the drilling's got more and more efficient. The costs have been coming down as a result of the size of the program and the efficiencies that we've applied in an operational sense there. So we use the man-portable rigs on the left there and much larger track-mounted rigs that can get us down to 2,800 metres if we need to go that deep. How does the ore body look? Well, it's got an ever-increasing surface footprint. The grey stuff there is what it looked like at the end of 2017. The red stuff is add-on bits, and of course there's a lot of red stuff that you can't see because it's three-dimensional, this thing, but it is going to be significantly bigger, and we're excited to wrap the preliminary economic analysis around what I hope this target delivers, around 10 million tonnes of copper and 25 million ounces of gold. From the high-grade point of view, there have been even more spectacular additions, as we're finding that the rich heart is wider than we thought in a northeasterly, southwesterly orientation. And you can see there the drill hole plan. That's got a few more drill holes to add onto it yet, but it is getting bigger, and happily it's getting richer as well. We're very focused on identifying where the real bornite-rich heart of this is. Bornite, as you probably know, is 63% copper. You want as much of that as possible in your concentrates. That will send Sumitomo into froth, and that's what we like. So there's some of the more spectacular intersections there that we've had in the bornite-rich heart of Alpala, and we're also finding that heart extends to the northwest and a little bit to the southeast as well. So bornite, lots of gold in it. As the copper grades go up as a result of bornite inclusion and greater concentrations of chalcopyrite, the gold grades go up disproportionately. So early on, this production operation should yield disproportionately more gold. So gold's nice, easy stuff to finance, and we like that from the point of view of this project. We have multiple development options for the project, and we're concentrating on how we can bootstrap into early production by concentrating on the high-grade heart. It'll almost certainly be done as an underground block cave, and we're drawing on the expertise that Newcrest offers through the board position held by Craig Jones, who's in charge of block caving at Newcrest. He's one of the world's foremost authorities on block caving. We're very glad to have him on the SolGold board. This is what it looks like in a sort of north-northeast, south-southwest section there, and you can see the current conceptual thoughts in respect of how we would decline into the Alpala ore body and also access Aguanaga. In an emerging mining nation like this, you want to try and steer away from open cutting. You don't want acid mine drainage problems. You don't want lots of community and social issues, so stay away from open cutting. And this ore body happily lends itself really well to block caving. Onto the blueprint, the application of the blueprint that we developed at Alpala to the other regional projects in the country. As I mentioned before, with the efforts of Steve Garwin and working out where these things should be, we went and pegged some 74 tenements. We've dropped 2 of them. The best of them define 10 major projects. 2 of them are gold. One's a very high-grade vein system, very close, in fact only 2.5 kilometres away from the Rocafuerte camp, which services the Alpala project 6 kilometres to the south. So I'll show you a little bit about the Blanca-Nieves vein system in a few slides' time, but basically we've got an Eocene belt there, and also the guts of the Jurassic belt that Fruta del Norte finds itself located on as well. And these projects are going to yield more and more assets for the SolGold pipeline going forward. So we're planning geophysical programs and early drilling programs using the newly regulated reconnaissance drilling permits that the Ecuadorian Mines Department is looking at handing out. We are the most active company in the country through the efforts of Jason Ward and the Regional Exploration Manager Chris Connell. A little bit about some of these projects. Very importantly, the Blanca-Nieves system is 10 kilometres long. It's a multi-vein system. It has had a lot of artisanal mining activity on it. We think they've probably taken maybe 200,000 ounces of gold out of it, mainly in ute loads of very rich ore. Of the tenor of 2 of those samples there, where we've had grades around 600 grams per tonne. Now, I can just about guarantee to you that the ore body there is not going to be 600 grams per tonne, but on average, I'm pretty confident that it's going to be a couple of ounces, and you don't need very much of that to provide the initial equity component of a development budget for Cascabel, the Alpala ore body, just a few kilometres to the south. There is also another porphyry system with about 6 square kilometres of silica lithocap on top of it. That's also got some great gold grades in it and some tantalising copper mineralisation that we suspect is evidence for an underlying copper-gold porphyry. It's not very far from Cascabel. It's in the same mineralisation province, and we're quite excited about what we might yield out of these. All of these projects are 100% owned by SolGold, and it's our intention to keep it that way, keep the upside for SolGold shareholders. As you saw from the capital structure slide before, we have some great shareholders. It's becoming increasingly institutional with the presence of people like BlackRock. We also have Newcrest there and Guyana Gold. So raising capital hasn't been an issue for us in the past since the arrival of Maxit Capital, who really got this project going from a capital subscription point of view back at the beginning of 2016, when we negotiated the original capital subscriptions at double the share price. So many thanks to Maxit Capital and Bob Sanger and of course Newcrest for putting up that original capital at around about 100% premiums to the share price. We like the go for gold strategy. Gold projects can be developed with about 3 times the capital efficiency of a big base metals project, and you can bring them on a lot quicker and the financing's a lot easier. So big project Cisne Loja, down in the southern part of the country, has about 3.5 square kilometre footprint, complex epithermal veining all over the top of a hill there. We're looking forward to getting the first holes into that. That could also hold multi-million ounce resource. In the southern porphyry belt that Fruta is located on, some fantastic porphyry systems there. They outcrop in creeks. They're full of bornite, they're full of chalcopyrite. There's some great rock chip channel results there. Timbara, Porvenir, La Hueca, and the Cisne Victoria project are examples of some of these great systems that we're seeing in southern Ecuador. So it'd be great if just one of these turned into another world-class Tier 1 copper gold porphyry for SolGold. We recognised them originally just by running around the creeks, panning concentrates, and yes, there's gold there. That's great, but importantly, there's a lot of magnetite too, the black stuff, and that tells you that you've got a big oxidised system, and that's why we're so enthusiastic about it. The veining that we pick up in the porphyry systems that outcrop in these creeks is almost the same as you see in the cores from Alpala, so it's a repeatable mineralisation model. It's the same that you see in northern Chile, and it's endorsing our large-scale model for definition of a serious slab of the world's copper resources in our exploration ground through Ecuador. I never get sick of looking at these slides. They're tantalising pictures of raw outcrop that's never had a hammer on it, loaded with chalcopyrite and bornite, is very compelling indeed. There's some of the Alpala core on the top right there. Here's an outcropping porphyry system in the La Hueca project. It's the same stuff and it covers the same sort of footprint, so we're very enthusiastic about what might come out of the drilling programs there. We have a very important focus on all of the stakeholders from the local community level, our staff, our field hands, the local community, local government and the federal government there. So we liaise mainly through Jason Ward's leadership with all of these stakeholders to make sure that everybody feels that when they get up in the morning, they're going off to work on their project instead of SolGold's project. We've got a tremendously loyal team of people. We've got about 400 staff on SolGold. They're nearly all Ecuadorian. They wear their uniforms proudly every day, as you can see from the group of geologists down there on the bottom right. And a third of those geologists are women. They're sensitive, they're observant, they're very dedicated to the job of recording the data, which is terribly important in an early stage grassroots exploration program such as our project in Ecuador. So SolGold's project is Ecuador. It's not just Alpala. Alpala's the first little bit. It's the tip of the iceberg, and we believe that we will be following the Tier 1 Alpala project up with some more world-class projects down through Ecuador. Education is terribly important to us. One of the greatest legacies that a company like SolGold can leave for an emerging nation in any industry is the gift of education. So we run porphyry schools 4 times a year under the efforts of Dr. Steve Garwin, who you saw in giving a presentation on one of the earlier slides. And that's one reason why these geologists are so loyal to us. We've had lots of major companies coming along trying to pinch them, but they stick with us, and we're very grateful to that. And some of these people will end up heading some of our operations in Ecuador into the future. We like to keep an idea on safe, sustainable and environmentally responsible operations. We put a lot of effort into that. We, touch wood, haven't had a lost time injury yet, and we haven't had any significant environmental accidents yet either. So we look after the water. We assist them with their local enterprises, fish farms, orchards, tree plantations. We have germinated and replanted and rehabilitation exercises over 300,000 trees, and it's a very important part of our effort. It endorses us with government and the local communities, and puts a strong social security cordon around all of our operations throughout the country. A little bit about the Cornerstone SolGold arrangement. As I mentioned before, we own 85% of it, they own 15%. They have to repay their 15% share of everything that we've spent since we earned our interest at $2.5 million. We've spent about $140 million on it to date, and they have to contribute at 10% or more, or dilute to 0.5% NSR, which we can buy for $3.5 million. So not worried about the ultimate ownership structure of the project. So in closing, I just want to recap on exactly what the SolGold opportunity is, and without reading it in a rotish fashion, I can tell you that we're not just interested in building one mine. We're interested in a pipeline of mining projects, development projects and exploration projects. We're interested in maintaining 100% equity where we can in these projects and copping the dilution at the corporate level. We're interested in a gold strategy to bootstrap development of the first of these projects at Cascabel, and that's why we're so interested in Blancanieves and Cisne Loja. So we are the largest tenement holder in the country. We're the most active explorer in the country, and it's pleasing to have people like Hancock and Fortescue following up in our footsteps from an exploration point of view. It's a great country to work in. Those of you who are interested in grassroots exploration in a nation where they actually support your efforts, go to Ecuador. You'll be well received, as we have been. So thank you very much for hearing the talk. Got a couple of minutes for questions, I hope.
Thanks very much, Nick. Maybe we have time for one very, very quick question. That looks like a no. Thank you very much, Nick. It's a fantastic discovery. Oh, sorry, we do have one. Sorry, Keith.
Can't I have three? We have some internal, very rubbery CapEx estimates, but I'm not at liberty to disclose them until we get the PEA out. But it is a big underground block cave development. These sorts of things in the high, dry Chilean Andes are, typically 6-7 billion. I've indicated that we can identify $3 or $4 billion worth of savings just from our logistic advantages, so you can get a rough idea what we're looking at there. We are working on a number of strategies to provide the equity and debt portions of that development impost, and that would come from early stage high-grade gold production, ramping up into production from the high-grade core of Alpala, and we're working on what I call a conditional total finance package, which involves putting in place the financing requirements now, but on a conditional basis, subject to getting the feasibility finished, the permitting arranged, and the right fiscal package from the government. Now, I must say that the government's bending over backwards to negotiate great fiscal packages with explorers and developers in Ecuador, and if you just applied the package that they handed out for Fruta del Norte to Alpala, you'd have a good result. Quicker, I hope. That's a predictable answer.
That's great. Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you.